This video is for learning target 3, which is to understand the life cycle of a product. And we can also use this idea to compare and contrast, reduce, reuse, and recycle. Um, so one of the first things that we did with this learning target was to talk about the steps in which um, any product that we would purchase from the store would go through. So the steps would look something like this. Um, for just about everything that you would go get from a grocery store or order from Amazon. Let's see, we use an example of a t-shirt. For a t-shirt, we have to harvest the raw materials needed to make a t-shirt. So in most cases, it's cotton or wool. So we wouldn't necessarily call it mining, but we would have to harvest it. If it's something like a mineral needed for your phone, then we would mine it instead of harvest. But we have to collect it from someplace on the earth. Then we have to process it. We have to separate it away from the things that we don't want. So in the case of a t-shirt and cotton, we'd have to separate the actual cotton itself away from the cotton plant. Then we have to shape it and assemble it into a useful form. So raw cotton isn't really useful to us until we get it into thread, or if we take that thread and make it into fabric. So that process of turning raw cotton into fabric, it would be step 3. Step 4 is then to take the fabric, or maybe it's already been assembled into a t-shirt, and package it into a way that can be bought by a consumer. So packaging t-shirts together, or maybe just packaging the fabric so it can be bought by somebody else to make a t-shirt. Then that's got to be shipped to another location, and then we have to go to the store and buy it. Or if we're buying it from Amazon, then the delivery truck's got to deliver it to our house. So the main idea for all of this is that every single one of these steps uses energy. To get it from the earth, to separate it, to make it, package it, ship it, use it, all of that uses energy. And if you think about the example of a t-shirt, most cotton is grown in the southern states of the United States, and most clothes are made in the opposite side of the planet, in China or Taiwan or Bangladesh. So the clothes that we've made have probably made an entire lap around planet Earth. It started here in the United States. Even though we have ship it step 5, really had to be shipped all the way over to the other side of the planet to be assembled and then shipped back to us in order for us to use it. So that all of these steps have a huge energy input. And some of these steps also create waste. Specifically step 2, when we separate away what we don't want from what we do want, there's definitely going to be some waste there. So the big idea for the life cycle of a product is that every time you buy something, you're not just exchanging money for something, you're also costing the planet energy and probably some waste that has to be dealt with too. So that was step 1. Then we spent a little bit of time and talked about mining, and the moral of the story for mining is that it's just generally bad for the environment. It uses lots of energy. Most mining uses water at some point to separate stuff, which then creates wastewater, which is not good for the environment. And then the last process is to put everything back the way it was, or it's supposed to be anyway. It's called reclamation. That is an energy intensive process. So from start to finish, mining is just not really good for the environment. So that brings us to, we did a couple activities with mining, but again, the moral of the story is that it's just bad. So that brings us to the end of the life cycle of a product. So what do we do with something when we're done using it? Well, we can, most of the time, we just throw it away. So it goes to the landfill. So we spent a little bit of time talking about landfills and why landfills are bad. We spent a little bit of time looking at how long it takes for things to decompose, especially things made of plastic or synthetic materials can take hundreds, if not thousands of years, if they even decompose at all. Things like glass doesn't really decompose, nor does certain types of plastics. So when we throw stuff in a landfill, um, it's probably not going to really decompose at a rapid rate. Even things that are supposed to decompose quickly, because the way landfills are constructed, it's not really optimal conditions, so they don't really go anywhere. So we looked at how landfills are, uh, briefly how they're made. And another problem that it presents is that when it rains, water soaks through the garbage, and that makes a disgusting concoction of trash juice that's called leachate. And most landfills are designed to pull that leachate out of the ground and uh, basically keep it from going into our groundwater. But at some point in the future, all landfills will eventually fail, and the uh, water that soaks through our garbage is eventually going to end up into our aquifers, which is where we get most of our drinking water. So, the moral of the story is landfills are bad. There's really nothing good about them, and we should, at all costs, you know, keep ourselves from throwing stuff in a landfill if possible. So that brings us to like, what other options do we have? And so then we came up with the idea of recycling. What if we recycled everything that we use instead of throwing it away? So we recycled paper in class to help us understand what this is like. These are the steps to recycling paper. We took old paper from class and we shredded it in a paper shredder. We then soaked it in water to get it kind of mushy. Our mushy paper was then blended, and then uh, we shaped it, our blended uh, paper into the shape of a new piece of paper and squeezed out all the water, and then we let it dry. And kind of similar to the life cycle product, the big takeaway from this is that every single step uses energy, and most of the steps also create waste. So when we shred it, the thing, whatever we use to shred it's going to take electricity. Pureeing it in a blender, that took electricity. Drying it, we could just let it air dry. But again, if you're a paper recycler, you don't have time to let everything air dry, so you're probably going to use industrial dryers to get your paper to turn out nicely. So um, there's a huge input of energy to recycle stuff, is the point that we're getting at. And when we use water to soak it, we now have some dirty water that's got a lot of ink that washed into it. It is not clean water. We can't just dump it on the ground. So now we've made another waste that has to be dealt with. So the moral of the story for recycling is that it's better than throwing it into a landfill, but it's still energy intensive and it creates a lot of waste, or creates more waste. So recycling is actually not a super great option. So our next option was to reuse. We could use that paper for another purpose, and that would delay throwing it into a landfill or having to recycle it. So finding another use for stuff is great. We can basically not put in the energy needed to recycle it, and we're not also creating waste. But then what we realized is the best option of all is to reduce what we use. The reason why reduce is the best is because we are not putting in the energy needed. So if we had to rank reduce, reuse, recycle, reduce is first because it saves energy. The reason why it saves energy is because we don't have to go through the 6 steps to the life cycle of a product. So we save all of the energy here. And it also saves the energy from having to recycle something. And it also keeps it from going into the landfill. So reduce is the best option because we actually save energy and we save waste. So just using less is our best option. Our next best option is to reuse something, so find another purpose for it. This doesn't use energy like recycling does, and it doesn't create waste like recycling does. So assuming whatever thing we reuse something for is a permanent reuse, then we've saved energy and kept more waste from being made. Recycling is our third option. This creates a input of energy needed to make the product new again, and most likely will create more waste. So not all of the product or part of the process of making the new product will create some waste. And our fourth place option is to throw in a landfill. Landfill it does actually require some energy to take it to the landfill, although it's probably not as much as uh, recycling the object. But once it's in a landfill, it's never coming out, and it's going to be part of this toxic soup that's eventually going to endanger our groundwater. So this is the ranking for reduce, reuse, recycle.